Welcome back to the Chasing Common Ground podcast. I've been on a hiatus. It's taken me some time to record episodes because life has been lifing, but I think that's a perfect segue into the topics that we're going to talk about today with my guest, my good friend Dal. And so before we hit record, we were kind of reflecting on the heaviness of 2025, or just like that feeling of like you're not where you need to be, or that you had to pause on certain things. And I think that is a topic that is going to be top of mind for a lot of people over this past year. So, Dal, first of all, I'd love it if you kind of gave an intro of yourself to my audience, just so that everybody knows who you are, kind of your origin, stuff like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, Chris. This totally wasn't planned, right? We were actually supposed to meet in person for coffee, but the weather's shit, and here we are. So at
Yeah,
least we get to do this.
yeah.
Okay, I'm Dal. I am a nutrition coach. I met Chris a couple of years back in this space, and I'm a mom of two. I do this part time, kind of, and I think that's about it. There's not
Well,
much more than that.
it's cool because a lot of people in our industry recognize you as being extremely humble, and then we support you by helping you to give your elevator speech. So, what I'll say is that you are widely known for being like an ambitious person who helps other people feel recognized in their strengths and their qualities. You also have unique experience in your own personal weight loss journey, to which not everybody in the industry can speak to.
Right.
So there is such a rarity in exhibiting the actual experience of certain struggles that people face, and being able to kind of like engineer like a framework for how you do nutrition, everything from the things that you promote with like that sandwiches aren't a bad thing. You don't need to demonize sandwich. It's about like the macronutrients and micronutrients that make up that sandwich to give it that crunch, to give it that flavor, to hit that protein target, to supplement that fiber target. And it's so much more in the details. So, as people listen to this episode, they'll get to learn from some of your experiences, some of the things that make you the great coach that you are, and some of the things that give value to adding more people into your network, even if it's just to learn from their life experience, even if they're not someone that you're actively hiring, but just somebody that's in your circle that enriches your life. And I would say that's definitely something that you do for a lot of people in our industry. You just kind of make our career better and more enriching. Um,
Oh, wow. That's a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, we got to give you your flowers when you deserve to have flowers. So, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I'll kind of frame this by sharing some of my own experiences in this year with like just my fitness.
Yeah.
I've been able to get more refined in what I have from my nutrition. So, I've made progress in that capacity where I've started to identify that some of the convenient options aren't in my best interest because they kind of throw off my sodium or they throw off my fat intake. But then when it comes to my jujitsu journey, it's totally taken like a back seat.
Mm.
And some of that is from things that I experienced with like my nutrition, and some of that is from just like muscle injuries, things that probably are correlated with stress, like just random muscle tightness or just occasional like pain around my ribs and stuff.
Mhm.
And so I've explored what it would take to course correct, and it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so I've made progress as far as the nutrition protocol, but I've had to come to terms with the fact that over the course of 2025, I've probably gone to an accumulated 8 jujitsu classes,
Oh,
which like it makes me sad because I'm like, I should have been there more. Like I should have gotten a stripe on my belt, but I don't want to get it just because I was there. I want to get it because it was earned based on merit. And having not shown up to more than one class per week, there's no way that I would earn it from merit. And to face that reality in the mirror can be very challenging for a lot of people. And it can be the reason why a lot of people will just quit.
Yeah.
And like when I'm still trying to figure out like some of these muscle soreness complications, like my right hip feels different than my left hip, and it didn't always feel that way, but now it does. And when I'm kind of like navigating that journey, it can make me doubt myself. And
Mm.
so, on that note, I think a lot of people in our industry, us included, have faced that in some modality of their ways of being active or their ways of being consistent. And we kind of started talking about that before we hit record. But Dal, if you have an example of
Yeah.
something that you've experienced that kind of like aligns with that, I'd love it if you shared it.
Yeah, I do. I think, and Chris, you know this, but I think it's something that I've been really, my professional and personal mantra is work within the parameters of your life, right? And it actually came to me, I'd say 8 months into my journey. And back then, it's like I had a baby, postpartum. I just began my journey. I just had so many things like what felt like to me against me, and being able to just see the light. But one day, again, story time, and some people may have heard the story, but it's something that really sticks with me and resonates with me. Was I was on my way to a training session. I was doing all the things at this point, like walking, training 3 times a week, all of the things, right? And I still had lack of sleep. My baby's getting up, and so I wasn't sleeping well. And something just came to me. I'm like, fuck this. I can't do this. Not that I can't, but this is a lot. Like I felt overwhelmed. And as I'm driving to my training session, I'm thinking about it and I'm like, you know what? Screw it. Like, why don't I just do what I can do? It's not about doing everything. It's about doing what you can in this season of life. And so in my training session, I talked to Andrew. And he's, yeah, cool, totally. It was just like natural to him to say, yeah, we can pivot. What can you do? What can you manage right now? And honestly, like maybe a little bit of it was needing permission to be able to scale back. And that eventually allowed me to adopt this kind of mindset of just pivoting and adjusting to the seasons of life. And most recently, actually, so the last, I'd say 6 months or so, I hadn't been consistent with my workouts. I do 2 full body days and usually see Andrew once a week. But those sessions were like over an hour long, sometimes hour and a half, hour 45 minutes, because I have my little one at home and there's a lot of interruptions, or he needs me, or something comes up. And so they were taking a lot longer than, I liked. And so I was in my head about it. I struggled. And see, again, like coaches do too. And all I had to really do was just have a conversation with my coach and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. Like, can we do something else? Can we adjust this? And he's like, yeah, okay, well, what do you need it to look like for you? Because what matters most is what can you be consistent with? And I'm like, yeah, like I need my workouts to be about a half an hour long. That's it. That's what we did. And on the spot, he just figured out a plan, adjusted my workouts, and that was it. And I pivoted and I feel so much better. And honestly, Chris, like I've never been as consistent as I have once I made this change.
That's amazing. Like I
Yeah.
love hearing that. And I think that's an experience that a lot of professionals can create within the people that they work with that sometimes they overlook. And there's an example that I have had firsthand happen because like lately I'm making a bigger push to work with more in-person people.
Yeah.
I just really enjoy working with in-person people, and I moved my business to AIM Fitness. I was with Evolve for 6.5 years and it was awesome, but then I just found I think I probably needed just more of a private space, just more quiet and more controlled. And as a result, I've taken on some clients that I connected with via Trevor from AIM Fitness. Like he'll get some like leads and stuff, or he'll have people in his network. And sometimes they'll need a trainer with like my personality or my
Mm.
skill set or just my energy. And something that I've noticed is how receptive people are to our ability to be agile, how much they really appreciate it when we can offer that. And that's everything from I have an exercise that I prescribe to a lot of people, but not to everybody. And it's like the alternating bear reach. And some people feel that exercise very intensely in their quads, or they kind of like they get in their head and they're like, They can't stop from like hiking their hips up in the air,
Mm,
and it feels defeating. And then they're like, well, can we do something else? And that puts me at a crossroads where I can either decide like, well, I need, for the continuity of my program, I need us to do this exercise, we just need to see it through.
right.
Or I can just take that weight off their shoulders and be like, well, actually, like we have a few options. Like we have the option of hanging knee raise. We can do like a dead bug variation. We could do a chop. We could do a pal off press. Like there's a lot of options, and we can even choose the one that you like the most,
Hmm.
so that you have the best training session that you could ever have. And that's like a soft skill that a lot of people have the need to refine. And if they refined that, it would have a net positive effect on like their business revenue, because of each individual client experience, the amount of retention. They don't have to think about client acquisition, which is one of the most expensive parts of being like a in-person personal trainer. So it's just something that's important that we highlight for any of the other coaches listening, or even for clients to understand that if they worked with like, for reference, when we're talking about Andrew, for the people who don't know
Oh.
him, it's Andrew Coates. And so if anybody wants to learn more about him, I produce his podcast. Him and I have known each other for probably 8 years now. And he's an incredible trainer based in Edmonton, coaches people online. And I don't feel any kind of risk in promoting him, because there's enough people that we can all help, that I can promote Andrew on my podcast. I can promote Dal on my podcast. Even though we all offer the same services, we can all be successful, which is, I
Yeah.
hope other people understand that they have the power to do that, and it will only grow their career. But even when I think about like a person's opportunity to have that experience with more different coaches, like I think if we all kind of adopt that mindset that like we are an evolution, we are always adapting and growing, and some of the best protocol or like the standard processes will refine themselves year after year, and we need to be open to that. We might change our mind on different protocol we've used in the past, and we might find people with different levers and limb lengths and different like chronic pain that comes up, where we just have to rewrite the script as to how we work with people.
Yeah, it's kind of like, if you don't mind me interjecting, because I solely do nutrition, right? But everything transfers. It's the same. Like we meet our clients where they're at. It's a client-centered approach. It's no, for me, personally speaking, no one client is, signing up and starting with me at the same place. And so the coaching is always centered around what my client needs. Again, exactly what you said, just, riffing off of that. Like it's, what do you need? What's going to work for you? And going back to what we were talking about before, like we can pivot.
Yeah.
We can pivot at any time. And I think that part of coaching is so important. And, cookie cutter approaches, or just looking at everything as if, no, this is the way it's going to be. I'm going to be inconvenienced if I need to change. That's not really helping your client.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's the same thing with nutrition. We don't all like eating the same foods. We don't. And you were just touching on how you're trying new foods as well, right? And that's the thing, like with, even for myself, I struggled with that with my own cultural foods, and I never integrated them when I was on any type of diet or extreme program. It was always your typical Western centered foods, and
Mhm.
that made it very unsustainable. And it didn't teach me anything. And so now with my clients, they're not all Indian clients, like they're from all different ethnic backgrounds. And what it requires of me is to really, come to that each appointment and be like, hey, what works for you? What can we do? And it doesn't have to look a certain way. For example, like I was posting in my story, I make curry chicken often, but what prepping looks like for me is having the base ingredients prepped and in my freezer ready to go, so that when I do make that meal, it takes me 20 minutes versus an hour and a half.
Yeah.
That is also, normally we've seen prepping as like ingredient prepping, prep your protein, your rice, whatever, veggies, whatever it may be. And then you're good for a few days and you can mix and match. It could also be bulk prepping food, so spaghetti sauce, things like that, and freezing. But for me, I was basically trying to show that, well, like I can make something in real time and it can happen really quickly, but this is what prepping looks like for me as well. So
Hmm.
it's not a this or that, it can be this and that, right? And so you just have to find what works for you. And as coaches, yeah, we have to show up for you and do what's best for you.
I want to pause this conversation for a second, and it's not to shift gears, but just to acknowledge something. The store at store.invigoratetraining.com isn't really just about merch. It's my way of staying connected with this community of people who's followed along with me throughout my 20s and now into my mid 30s. You'll find women's fitted racerbacks with the line, I might look normal, but deep down I question why I agreed to do 40 push ups per day. Because sometimes humor comes after you've done the work. And there's the legacy CL gear, the hat and the toque that you see me wearing all the time, along with t-shirts that say, don't bet against the quiet ones. Because often the underdogs are the biggest game changers in life. There are custom shoes that I designed myself with the mantra, stay kind, stay strong, keep going, built right into the design. And there's also Park Far Away Club stickers and reusable bags for all your shopping needs. Additionally, I've created a line of fully human apparel, a reminder that self-improvement isn't just a one-size-fits-all template, it's personal. If we were all the exact same, we'd never truly be human. All pricing on the website is in Canadian dollars, shipping is inclusive, and your orders are often shipped domestically. This helps avoid tariffs or extra fees. This store exists because of you, and my career exists because of you. I'm genuinely grateful you're here. I'm grateful for all the people who work with me, and I'm so excited that we get to build something meaningful together. If anything here resonates, you can find it at my store at store.invigoratetraining.com. And thank you for being part of my world. Definitely. I mean, there's a lot that I want to
Yep.
draw from that, and I want to kind of like paint a picture of what people face and show kind of like the contrast in like different cultures. So, first and foremost, what I found with just like Western nutrition is that a lot of people have a misconception over portion sizes for vegetables
Mm.
and a misconception over the realities of the recommended intake of fat in certain meals. Like we'll see that the protein is on point and the calories are on point, but we kind of disregard the fat content, or sometimes we disregard the sodium content.
Mhm.
And those can be a flag for, is this choice too processed for like moderation? And do we need to swap it out for something that is just like the raw ingredients or the whole food ingredients? And then on the other end of the spectrum, I do want to speak specifically to like the cultural obstacles. So to add context for the audience, I have been dating an awesome Indian woman for 6+ months, and it's super cool. I'm getting to get to know her family better, but with that comes unique food choices and food
Mhm.
opportunities. And when we're looking at it from like a macronutrient perspective, I see huge opportunities to kind of look at what can be adapted without compromising on like the taste and the savoriness of the food. And I know, Dal, that you have a resource that helps make this more clear. But for like case study purposes, I kind of want to dive into some of the core principles that you've identified when you are deconstructing and reconstructing like a traditional Indian meal,
Right.
and what changes that you've made that have allowed you to live the lifestyle that you currently live.
Yeah, so let's just look at I want to make this and I'm going to present an example, right? Because we
Mm.
often think that cultural food looks very like, different from Western food as far as what it's comprised of. And yes, okay, there is a caveat. Indian food tends to be carb heavy, but we'll take that out of the picture for now. If you look at it though, it's like rice, protein, and you have like your veggies. With Indian food, it just gets all mixed up. Right. So for the most part, we have all those components. We have all the vegetables, when we make the vegetable dishes. So we're talking cauliflower, eggplant, like all sorts of things. There's onions. It's just all mixed up with different spices, right? And then there's your meat-based items, same thing. Like, you have the curry sauce, but it's still just chicken thighs or chicken breast.
Yeah.
And then when you put together your plate, it's like veggies, and not a lot of people eat meat. Like a lot of people in the Indian culture are vegetarian. And that's where it's kind of lacking, is where can we introduce protein, right? Where can we add it? What can we add versus what can we take away? If you're having to, we say rotis, but it's basically like tortilla, right? Like it's just another version of it. So instead of having two, let's just have one. Let's increase your vegetables that you're having, which we refer to as sabji. And if you're having lentils, instead of having a huge bowl of them, let's reduce that a little bit. And now let's add like Greek yogurt or cottage cheese for added protein if you're not eating meat, right? Like tofu, how can we introduce tofu into the diet? And how can we make your plate look balanced? It doesn't look like your Western traditional plate, but when you actually deconstruct it, it's the same things, it's the same components. And then number two would be, how are those items prepped? How much oil are we using? Because there is a tendency in the culture that we're free pouring.
Hmm.
We're not measuring. We have no idea how many calories are in a tablespoon of oil. And I've worked with Indian clients, and they went from, we didn't just say, oh, cut it all out. It's, hey, let's have a look at how you're preparing your food. Okay, you're just free pouring right now. Maybe you think that's 6-7 tablespoons of oil. Let's start measuring tablespoons and maybe just put in 3 for now.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's start there, right? And let's see how that goes. And just making those adjustments makes a huge difference. And
Hmm.
so really, to conclude, you can eat Indian food, you can eat Asian food, anything. It just depends on how you prep the food, portion size, and how can you introduce and add to it versus take away.
Definitely. And I like that you brought that up, especially with measuring oil,
Yeah.
because like for us, being in the space that we're in, we feel like we've talked about oil measuring for years because it seems like it's the first thing that we would think about. But for a lot of people that we've worked with, like even people that I've worked with for multiple years, it just kind of becomes something that's in the background because it's easy to sort of like get sort of like complacent about things that don't feel like they carry consequences. But an analogy that I recently used was like we are aware of when there's enough oil in a meal to make it start to taste delicious, but we cannot define the point where there's too much oil because nobody has gone out. Well, I'm sure somebody on YouTube has where they've just, I'm going to chug some oil.
I'm
If
sure
you
they have.
if you took like a shot of cooking oil, and I do not suggest this or advocate this, it probably wouldn't be repulsive tasting like someone might assume. I'm sure it would just be like, oh, that felt like nothing. Then when you mix it into a meal and it still feels like nothing, but it carries 150 calories per portion, like
Yeah.
it stacks up fast. So for something to taste and feel like nothing, and the only consequence that it has is it notably makes more things taste delicious, it has a power that we kind of overlook. The other piece of context that I wanted to share, just for people who just find themselves in these scenarios where, well, my meals and the dishes that I enjoy aren't quite like what was described. And so, what I often face is if I am having Indian food, oftentimes it'll either be with people who are strictly vegetarian,
Mhm.
people who eat all meat, like they have no bias as to whether they're having beef or pork or anything like that, because there's all kinds of different opportunities on the spectrum. And if it is something that is like an omnivore dish, then I will often look at the opportunity to just simply suggest like a higher quantity of a lean meat in that dish, because sometimes it's like we don't know until we ask. So if Serena's cooking me a dish or something like that, I'll be like, that was delicious. And I'll be like, you know what I really like is just chicken. So if you could just add in an extra portion of chicken. And so now that she knows that, like sometimes she might not have the chicken on hand. So she'll make everything except for the chicken. Then I'll prep the chicken
Yes.
and I'll add it to the chicken that I prepped. And so
Yes.
then we get more collaborative with it. And there's just so many opportunities to be like that where you can enroll somebody else to advocate for your health. And the other opportunity that I experience is that, like, if I am having conversations with Serena or her family members, we don't know what we don't know. And
Exactly.
so, like, the distinctions of is organic produce better than regular produce? And in a lot of cases, it's just basically on the same playing field. And sometimes you're just paying more for that organic label. And that's an example of something that we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And another instance, it could be like, are we aware of the value of having something like eggs as your breakfast in contrast with having something like a muffin from Starbucks?
Toast and tea for Indian people. That's it.
I mean, that's definitely something that's popped onto my radar. I'm like, okay, clearly there are like distinctive like cultural differences where I need to adapt as well. And then the thing that excites me is the opportunities to make like reinvent certain things. So, as an example, I run into a lot of people who have sort of like a fundamental issue with the texture of eggs.
Mm,
And the reason why they have that fundamental issue with it is because of the way that the eggs have been prepped or utilized in different meals. So you can conceal egg whites in a lot of different things. Like you can conceal it into a bowl of oatmeal and it's undetectable. And you can make it taste more flavorful and rich by adding like nutmeg, cinnamon, and like a 0-calorie maple syrup
yeah.
and some fruit and then a dollop of Greek yogurt. And in all of that, you can bypass any like feelings they might have about like a whey protein. You can bypass any feelings they might have about the texture of eggs. And you're still increasing the protein content of that dish by maybe 15 to 20 grams of protein undetected. Nobody would
Yeah.
be the wiser.
I do that
Um,
with my pancakes, Chris, in the mornings. I put in egg whites,
yeah,
instead of water, right? Why would you, and I put in chia seeds. And it's, this is the thing, exactly what you're saying. Like, it doesn't have to be consumed in a traditional sense. And we have to be open-minded about introducing different items and how we can make them work for us.
exactly. And like in that same sense, the way that we can sort of reinvent the profile of the pancake.
Hmm.
We can also do that if we like. I love the science behind bread, like in the fermentation process.
Mm,
Like oftentimes, North American bread ferments during the digestive process, and then European bread will often be fermented in the production of the bread, like the sourdough
sourdough.
bread, the rye bread, stuff like that, in contrast with a Dempster's white bread, where like why do I always feel such discomfort after I have this bread in contrast with a very nutrient dense, like maybe it's like stone ground, or maybe it's a bread with like less refined grains and stuff. Like all of the chemistry and all the science behind that correlates with the outcome that we experience. And so then if it's okay, I feel in my heart that in order to have a breakfast that feels authentic to me, I need to have toast and tea. Even just going through and on a Sunday baking like 16 loaves of nutrient dense bread for that toast and tea can make a massive difference. And like I say 16 because like when it comes to the culture,
Yeah.
then you're going to be
Just go
baking
through a lot.
for a lot of people, and you're going to be
Yeah.
thinking about more than just the individual. And that's where the nuance of coaching to the individual that you're working with makes such a big difference, because you're not telling them that they have to fit into a box and be a meathead. You're giving them the skill set that they need to bridge the gap between where they are and where it's in some manner they wish to be. And in a lot of cases, it chalks up to quality of life and longevity. Like
Yeah.
I try, and a lot of people recognize this in how I speak about fitness and nutrition, but I try to make it very clear that I'm not trying to make somebody like look a different way or act a different way. I'm trying to support them in pursuing what they in their heart deem as like their greatest potential. And a lot of times that comes in how we speak to people, like helping them to be more kind and compassionate to themselves. If I have a client that's really struggling with a strength discrepancy between their right and their left side, I'll try and help them frame it as like their more conditioned side and their less conditioned side or something, like not my bad side, not my weak side. Because if you are always describing your left side as like less strong, then you almost have to confirm that. You have to be
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I can't make this too strong because that's my less strong side. Or I can't be stable on this side because that's my wobbly side. And then the same thing rings true for a lot of the ways that we reflect on who we are, how we take up space, what we're capable of, what our potential is. And that language makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
But without taking over the entire podcast, I want to dig into some of the things that you changed your mind about in the year 2025. And it can be in terms of how you structure your life. Maybe it's in terms of the expectations you have of yourself. Maybe it's your goals,
Yep.
or maybe it's the way that you interact with people.
Yeah, I'd say there's a combination of the things that you mentioned. So on a personal level, it is definitely being comfortable and accepting that my actions, need to align with my expectations or vice versa. And so, like what we were talking about before, basically it's okay. Like I'm not going to look like the toned, defined version of my friends that I love and love to see because I understand what that entails.
Mm-hmm.
I understand how much time that you have to put into building muscle and, your nutrition and all of that. And that's okay because this season of life doesn't allow that for me. And it's also something that I choose not to pursue right now. And I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with what I look like. And maybe in a year, I might be in a position where I can train 4 days a week for an hour and I really go hard on, like building that muscle. Maybe, who knows? But I'm very comfortable and accepting of that now. And I think I internalize it more so than I have had in the last 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
because it's always kind of been that, the battle in your head, right? It's, am I not? Should I be doing this? Should I not? But I've really accepted that. So there's that piece. And then also, just professionally speaking, my content and, especially having taken up the mentorship with Jeb as well. It's something that, what he teaches and how he guides us. It was something I was doing unintentionally, didn't know I was doing on my journey. Like I was self-regulating, learning that with my kids, but I was also applying it to myself on my weight loss journey. I just couldn't tie a framework to it. And in general, being in the space, Chris, and not a lot of coaches are going to like this, but I don't really care. I just see a lot of the tone doesn't resonate with me when it's like really harsh and
Yeah.
it's do this, this, this. And a lot of it is like checklists, or a lot of it is like accusatory, or it's your fault type of messaging. And that just doesn't align with me. And it's not about fault. For me, it's more about awareness. And
Mm-hmm.
that is something that I think many people lack. I know I did for sure. And so even with my messaging, it's more so, it's shifted. It's more storytelling. It's more trying to align with the end user, like, somebody that's reading that, they can resonate with that and they can see themselves in that. They can see that, yes, this is what I've also gone through. And not only is it like, is it something difficult and something that we need to process and we need to work through, but that it's possible. that
Yeah.
change is possible and we can choose to do things differently. So that sense of like autonomy, self-efficacy, but that comes with time. And so my messaging, I'm trying not to be so much about the external. And so even when I share my before and afters, I always try to tie them back to the progress beyond the scale and where I'm at. And don't get me wrong, aesthetics will always be my goal. That is just inherently, like, we're human. We all want to feel good, look good, all of that. But how much of that pie it takes up, like something I learned from Jeb too, it's like this much now, right? Like one, I don't know, just a tiny bit. And I want to emphasize that this journey isn't just about the number on the scale. And so that is what I'm trying to do through my messaging now and focus on more of those things. Because when someone comes to me, even though that is their goal, like I think through my messaging, they also understand that there's not a timeline and that we're going to choose to do things differently this time. So it's going to look different as well.
I want to pause here for a second because this connects directly to the kind of conversations that we have on this show. Chasing common ground has never been about hacks, shortcuts, or chasing attention. It's about long term thinking, craft, and building something that actually lasts. And the same philosophy is why I built my podcast course. It's about fundamentals and foundations: how to start a podcast, how to structure it, how to stay consistent, and how to build simple workflows so your show fits into your life instead of competing with it. The course is updated constantly with gear reviews, standard operating procedures, AI tools, and best practices. It's not because things change fast, but because clarity matters. I want to share a quick clip from someone many of you already know about, Andrew Coates. He's a good friend of mine, and he is the host of Lift Free and Diet Hard, a published writer, speaker, and longtime coach. Here's what he had to say.
I'm going to give a shout to my producer because he's a beauty. Chris Liddle, he's the one who does all the back end stuff. He does all the slides. He's the one who puts together all the ads. And I couldn't do this stuff without him. He's great. He's got his own podcast, but he's also got courses and he will answer your questions if you guys are literally interested in podcasting. He's great at this stuff. So go check him out. Just search Christian Liddle on Instagram. I followed him. You'll find him. He's super.
If you're thinking about starting a podcast or you already have one and want it to feel simpler, more intentional, and more sustainable, you can learn more at christianlittle.com/podcast course. And as a thank you to listeners of Chasing Common Ground, you can save $50 with the code Common Ground, one word, all caps, at checkout. Pricing is in Canadian dollars. Thank you. And now let's get back to the podcast. Yeah, I like that. And it kind of gave me a few things that I can utilize to bridge the completion of this episode together.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, Jeb is another friend of the show. And for people who want to learn more about him, I think I had an episode with him within the last few months. And people can find that episode and more by going to podcast.invigoratetraining.com. And if you go to podcast.invigoratetraining.com/Jeb Stewart Johnston, I think that'll take you to a page dedicated to all of his appearances on the show, with links to the YouTube, Spotify, everything like that. And then secondly, if you haven't had the chance, his newsletter that he puts out is amazing. He caters to both fellow coaches, but then he also caters to people who are really working on the mindset portion of their nutrition journey. Additionally, I also want to make sure that we give a shout out to Aram Gregorian's event,
Yes.
the Real Coaches Summit. I've taken it upon myself to kind of appoint him a sponsorship spot on my podcast, where every opportunity that I have when it's with a fellow coach who also goes to the event, I give an event a proper promotion so that it encourages people who are on the fence to get their ticket. And the way that I'm going to frame this is first by relating to what they may be feeling when they are not sure whether they're going to go or not. Back in 2019, that was the year that I went to my very first non-local fitness conference. I had gone to a local one that we had Sohee Lee, and we had Eric Trexler, I think, and a few other notable people, and it was a big deal, but it wasn't as big of an investment. And so when it came to planning to go to Kansas City, I had to consider the cost of the conference, the cost of the hotel, the cost of the flight. And it was beyond what I was prepared to spend on a conference. Like, to make that happen, I was still getting birthday gifts from family. I was still getting Christmas gifts, and everybody that I was getting gifts from, I had to ask if it was possible for them to make it like a cash gift so
Love
I
it.
could put it towards that conference. And that still didn't cover all my expenses. And so like I went down there and I split a room with another coach to save on expenses, and I lived off of a promo that I got through Uber Eats where you got 10 cheeseburgers for $10, and I split them up across 3 meals.
Oh,
And like I only had a paid meal like twice just for optics, so that it didn't look it didn't look like I was really broke. And so I went to that length to be able to make the conference happen, and nothing bad has happened to me. It's the reason why I connected with Alex McBrarty, who I work
right.
alongside with. Him and I collaborate all the time. It's the reason why I booked like at least 50 of my podcast guests. It's how I connected with Jeb in the first place. It's how I connected with people like Derek Stanley, and just like the list of benefits goes on and on. And so I was in the shoes of the person that is telling me bluntly that they have better things to spend their money on and that they just can't afford it. And the outcome that I can trace it to is not only has that choice, and it was a choice encouraged to me by Andrew Coates, shout out Andrew again, not only has that allowed me to make a long-term career in the industry, it's also given me the freedom to just like casually be like, yep, Aram, I'll be here next year. I'm going to buy the ticket for next year as soon as you send me the checkout. And it's given me the ability to diversify my opportunities in the industry, where not only do I work with the general population on their fitness nutrition, but I also get contracted to hire or contracted to help a lot of coaches, not only with their podcast, but with their media, etc. So I just really hope that that makes a case for people who know that it's a good opportunity to go to the Real Coaches Summit, but they're just hesitant for some reason. And for the next however many minutes, Dal, I'd like you to give your pitch as to why people,
Yes. Should go.
yeah, to the Real Coaches Summit.
Yeah. Well, going to in-person events literally has changed the trajectory of my life. And I was a newbie and I chose to go to Andrew's 2 years ago, his conference, right? 2 years ago, was it?
Yeah, I think
I didn't
so.
know anybody. And, he said something to me that quite profound and that stuck with me. He said, Al, it's not enough to just be present. You have to immerse yourself, like going to these events. And so that's what I did. And I met some wonderful people, some of whom are my very close friends now. I met you through Andrew and we've connected. And, and Chris doesn't open up to everyone. So it takes time.
Yeah.
And I feel, we've developed this friendship and relationship, just outside of everything as well. And I then shortly after decided to go to the conference 2 years ago for RCS, for Rom's conference. Again, the best decision ever. I was still a little bit timid and shy, but I knew a few people and I did the same thing. And I met so many wonderful people. Again, whom are my friends today. I met actually Daniel Yoris, so shout out to him.
Yeah.
He actually, I think I heard him on their podcast, The Other Side Lifestyle, and I started following him. And then we were just chatting in the DMs and whatnot. And then we met in person. And he actually connected to my current podcast partner, Carmi. And we're actually really close friends. And we got to connect in person 2 years ago at RCS and again last year. And now we were talking to Aram, we had him on our podcast actually, and it's kind of like a coach's reunion,
Yeah.
right?
It feels more than a coach's reunion. Like I think of Aram like a big brother. Like I
Yeah.
feel like he's part of my family, and I hope that he feels that energy from me.
Yeah.
Like I'm taking care of his conference because he's family.
Yeah.
And I don't make that statement lightly, because I know that you can't have that kind of a connection with everybody. And obviously there'll be probably areas where I have an opinion and he has an opinion and they don't totally align.
Oh, for
But
sure.
so many people in our industry, like they feel like siblings to me. They feel like, in some cases it's like they feel like an uncle, in some cases it's a younger sibling, and it's like we want to look out for each other. And the Real Coaches Summit is an opportunity to build, like, when it comes to connections, and even from a financial wealth standpoint, your connections are everything that you have, and you have to water the plants. I was having a discussion with one of my friends who is very influential in my like wealth management portfolio kind of thing. And so what he really reiterated
Okay.
was just how important the connections you have are.
Yes.
And so I'm hoping that if people take one thing from all of this promo that we did, is that they understand that even if they're new to the space, even if they're a little timid or shy, even if they can't quite afford it, but they could stretch and make it work. Like, even if it means you have to sell something that you haven't used in 10 years, it sounds toxic, but if you haven't used it in 10 years, it's probably time to sell it.
Exactly.
So it's just like, no matter what you have to do, I think it's worthwhile. But Dal, I know that we have only so much time.
I
So I want to
know.
give you one opportunity to just say one little piece of advice to people that they can take from this podcast.
Okay. It would be to really let go of the timeline. And when I say approaching things differently and choosing to do things differently, I think that plays a really big role. And also, coaches matter. And Jeb actually posted this a few days ago, but it was about investing in the right coach, and that goes a long way. And find someone that wants to nurture relationships
Yeah.
and wants to get to know you. And if, I spent decades trying to do this alone and, didn't share with anybody the type of things that I was doing. And it wasn't until I sought out support community that I realized that no, we're not meant to do this alone. We're meant to
Yeah.
have this community and the support and yes, the accountability and all of it. And it doesn't have to be Chris or I. Like that's not what this is about. It's about just finding someone that you resonate with, that you can build that relationship and trust with, so that you find yourself on a journey and a transformation where you're building that self-trust for yourself and you're leading with those parts of yourself that says, hey, like I can do this, I'm capable, and I just need to give it time.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Dal.
Thanks, Chris, for having me. I wish it could have been longer.